Glennice McKinney in the late 50s to early 60s, and Grandma always said she was looking at the Sparties. You guys can correct me, but I would say this photograph is from about 1952. This is Phyllis and John McKinney. Barbara Crawford. This is a great group photo. Another group photo. This is John McKinney with Patty Armbruster and her husband and daughter. And Phyllis and Clara Johnson with Diana, Mike, and Xenia. This is Carolyn and Eilena Wilson with Mike and Donna Lochner and their son Drew. This is John Vickery and Hazel Clark with Richard and Linda Sharp. And this is Bill McKinney and his sisters, children of Tyne McKinney. This is about 1954 with Grandma and Grandpa and the grandchildren. It looks like Carol, Diana, Sherry, John, me, Ned, and standing is Jay and Marilyn. I apologize for all the mistakes I've made on this. This is Meredith Price, Marilyn Chittick, Vonda, and Rita, and Dylan, Darby, and Rick. This is everyone again. This is LeBeer and Barbara Crawford with John Crawford and Marna and Kim Hollingsworth and the three boys.
McKinney family reunion. It is June the 22nd, 2003, and it's the first McKinney reunion we've had for a long time. And in just a minute, after we get everybody on here once, we're going to divide up into individual family groupings so that we can hear some stories. In the meantime, we're going to take a quick look at everybody who's here, all the way down to the end. And here's Aunt Barbara. Hi, Aunt Barbara. It's her rat face. So, if you want to, I think everybody can go ahead and go someplace cool, except maybe we'll keep Aunt Barbara's clan here for just a minute. Can we do that? And oh, you want to get John later? Okay. How about if we do Uncle Harold's clan first? Shall we do that? So if the rest of you want to go stand under a cool tree, we'll get Uncle Harold's group first. Okay. Brent, can you tell us who's here with you?
I'm Brent McKinney. This is my wife, Bonnie.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hello. My oldest daughter, Emma. Maddie. And my youngest daughter, Emma.
Hi, Emma.
I'm Harold.
Hi, Harold. And who's the guy there between you and Brent?
I'm Jay McKinney. I'm Harold's son. And
Good.
This is my wife right over here in the stripes. That's Rosie.
Hi, Rosie.
My daughter, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Her boyfriend, Kyle.
Nice to have you, Kyle. Okay, and there's Carol.
I'm Carol. My husband, Bert.
Watch that finger.
My son, Ryan. His wife, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Granddaughter, Shelby.
Hi, Shelby.
My daughter, Lindsay. Her friend, Kurt. Colin. And Shelby. Did I get everybody?
Great. Okay, and the next one's Gina, right?
Yep, I'm Gina. Crenshaw now. This is my husband, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
My son, Dane. And I'm Ned's daughter.
Yes, I'm going to tell a very quick story about Ned and I, and then I'll let the rest of you tell a story. We'd been back along the creek, as we often were, and Ned came along on Babe, the white horse, without a saddle. And so I was walking, and he said, well, just get on the horse. So he helped me get up on it, and we got closer and closer to the house, and the closer we got to the house, Babe knew she was almost home, and she started to gallop, and it was really exciting, except as we turned the lane, I started to slide off. And the more I slid, the more I held on to Ned, and finally I fell off and dragged him off, but she stepped on him. So if anybody else...
I have Babe's mark on my foot.
Oh, Exhibit A. Okay. Now, does anybody else have a McKinney family story that you'd like to share? Any story at all about the McKinneys?
Don't get up though, because I have to take a picture.
Okay.
Oh, there are hundreds of them. Come on, you guys, out with it.
There's too many. We have too many.
Well, I'm going to tell a story about Carol if you guys are too closed-mouthed. Jay and Ned and I would build little tents in the living room at Grandma and Grandpa's, and anything that went wrong was Jay's fault. And Vera didn't want us to scare Carol because when she was little, if she got scared, she'd hold her breath and faint. So, of course, Jay and Ned and I couldn't wait until we could lure Carol into the tent and tickle her and freak her out until she held her breath. So, see, that's what you get for not telling stories. I'll tell mine. Does anybody else have one? Going. Maybe next. Well, we're here with John McKinney and Uncle Johnny. Who you got there next to you? Uncle Johnny, who's that lady next to you?
Oh, that's old Pat.
Is it? It's old Pat. And Pat's...
Too old.
Pat, who's the guy you got with you today?
This is my husband Jack and my youngest daughter Kelsey.
Hi, Kelsey. Well, do you have other children besides Kelsey?
We have Colin, who is 20, and Ashley, who is 23.
Good. Uncle Johnny, do you have any other children besides Pat?
And they got a dog that's about 25.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And Sherry is.
Oh,
missing
Sherry.
today.
Sherry is your sister?
Yeah.
What's her last name?
Lenny. Sherry Lenny.
Sherry Lenny. Make sure that you put her name on my list, would you? Okay, Pat, tell us a story.
Well, apart from the monkey runs that Marilyn would take us on. Do you remember
Oh, the
those?
bear hunt.
Yeah. those.
Going on a bear hunt.
We would go on bear hunts. That was always great. But dressing up in Marilyn's clothes. Actually, I also remember a good night staying at Grandma Fern's when we would look down the grading and watch Lucille and Ralph when they were dating.
Oh, how kinky. Wow.
When they were still dating, that was fun. We'd see. We were in the feather bed, and Fern would open up the door of the stairway and smell of camphophenique. Up the stairway.
Yeah.
Grandma, we're fine.
She kept that company in business. Yeah, she kept that company in business.
Yeah.
Well, Uncle Johnny, I have one story that I remember about Sherry. Since she's not here, we'll talk about her. When you guys lived out by Circleville, I was out there one time, and Sherry had not started to walk yet. So I gave her a little pole or a cane, and she took her first steps with me.
That's right.
It was wonderful. Yeah, she better get over here next time. Okay, you guys, Okay, well, here we are with Phyllis and Claire Johnson. Well, Phyllis, how are you related to the other two that were here with their family?
I am the youngest of Glennice and Fern McKinney's children. Harold, John, and Diana for being my siblings.
Diana.
Good. And who's your husband?
My husband, Claire.
Is that Claire? Hi, Claire. And who else is here?
My daughter, Diana, and her fiance, Mike James.
Hi, Mike.
Granddaughter, Xenia Hastings.
Hi, Xenia.
And we're to have another granddaughter here, hopefully, soon.
Oh, good. Okay.
She doesn't mean that I'm expecting. She means that Addie's.
Well, it's okay if you are. We'll meet again to get another picture. So who has a story to tell? Make sure you talk nice and loud.
Okay, when I was little, probably 5 years old, Meredith used to come and visit me, Meredith, and we do all kinds of things. We'd go in the haymow and out in the fields, and he would make parachutes that would out of handkerchiefs that you throw up there and come down.
That's right.
Bombs and milk carton boats, and he said that he could make a kite big enough to take me up in the air, but he never did that.
Hey, we've got that to catch up on.
One day I said, let's go up in the haymow in the big barn, and he said, are you sure we're supposed to do that? And I said, don't worry about it, I'll just tell him it was your idea.
Well, I've got one story to tell. I was going to tell Phyllis a while ago. Last night we drove through Middle Fork, and every time I drive through Middle Fork, I think about when Jay and Ned and I were out there. We were having a family reunion at your house, and we picked up green pears. And when cars would drive by, we'd try to hit the cars with the pears. And all went well until we hit one. And then the guy turned around and came back, and we begged and pleaded, please don't tell our parents, please don't tell our parents. And he said, okay, but don't you throw any more green pears. So every time I drive through Middle Fork, that's the green pear area.
Sitting on those front steps.
Do you remember that, Jay? Yeah, it was fun, wasn't it? Okay, do you guys have another story?
Not that I can think.
Claire doesn't have a story? Well, Phyllis, how about one story about the old McKinney family? Is there any family history that you can tell?
First thing I think of, and I thought they'd be here today, is Barbara played with Doris and Wilma Jean all the time, and Richard was my friend. He was like a brother. And one day we got this wild idea. We were at his house, and the corn knives were laying out there, and we went in the hen house swinging those. Feathers went every place. We thought that was so funny. We were probably about 5, because he and I are about the same. He didn't think it was very funny that night. I don't think my folks knew about it. His folks, I think we should
Tell him it was his idea.
Was that at where Grandma and Grandpa lived when I was a kid?
It was down, yes. Well, it was down at Uncle Wells's house.
Oh, yeah.
Lived, you know.
Right. Okay, well, thanks to the Johnsons. Good stories. Now, next year, let's think up some more, okay? So, whose group do we have here?
I'm Eileen Wilson, and I'm Cressy Cowden's granddaughter, and this is Erica Berry. She's my great-granddaughter.
Hi, Erica.
And this is Dana Myers. She is my daughter.
Hi, Dana. And who's this guy?
I'm Mike Loeffner.
Hi, Mike.
I'm Carol and Wilson. I'm Eileen's sister and also Chrissy's granddaughter. And this is my son-in-law, Mike Loeffner, my daughter, Donna Loeffner, and my grandson, Drew Loeffner.
Well, we're glad that you guys are here today. Can you tell us how Aunt Cressy was related to Glennice McKinney?
They were brothers and sisters.
Yes, they were brothers and sisters. How many of them were there, do you know? How many siblings were there?
7.
Oh, really?
7. Yeah.
7. Great.
7.
Terrific. Did any of you want to tell us a nice McKinney story?
Well, the only one I can think about is when you go to the reunion, there were so many people, you wondered if you'd ever get anything to eat.
When it was at the Frankfurt Shelter House? When you were little, did you ever roll down that hill toward the street?
Probably so.
Sure. Either that or you'd go down to that fountain and try to squirt everybody with the fountains. Yeah. I guess I may be reading my own thoughts into that. Did anybody else want to share something? No? Well, we're very glad to have you. And if you have email, make sure that you put your addresses on there.
I want to share something. Aunt Cressy could make the most beautiful pictures of pies. I mean, they were beautiful. And I've not been around Carolyn. She probably does too, but Eileen has got the same art.
Wow, well, which pie do you do best?
It's not only delicious, they're just beautiful.
Oh, all of them. Hey, wow.
Just like Aunt Cressy.
She is going to be the list that we invite next year. Okay.
Top of the list.
Thank you. Now.
Oh, now you've got to tell your story.
Yeah, first of all, how about Hazel? Can you tell us how this group is related to the Fern and Glennice McKinney family?
This family is, here, let me get my thoughts together now. Mary Elizabeth McKinney was a sister to Glennice McKinney. And John Vickery is their son, Ray and Elizabeth McKinney Clark.
Great. Well, we're very glad that you guys are here today. And who else do we have here? Who's Linda?
Yes, Linda is our daughter, and Richard is our son-in-law.
Hi, Richard.
Richard and Linda Sharp. They live in New York in the summertime.
Oh, that sounds like a good thing to do.
And in the wintertime, they go to
Wintertime's not a good time to do that.
No, they have deep snow up there. Right.
So
Well,
they go to Arizona in the winter, and they're on their way home now to
New York, Rochester, New York. But when all this came about, we...
Did Asa McKinney live close to you when you were there?
Pretty close in Clinton, New York.
Yes, I've been there.
An hour.
Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Lucille and I drove to Clinton, New York in a 1953 DeSoto.
Oh, did you?
And I thought Clinton, New York was the most beautiful place. All those hills. Did you have another McKinney story that you wanted to share?
Well, when we had the reunion years ago, my grandmother was in charge of the iced tea. And she sweetened it with honey. And we had to stir, I remember as a kid trying to stir that, and it was very thick. It was real good iced tea when she got it all finished.
I'll bet. Did you have it in a crock?
She had it in a big wash tub.
Oh, really? And that was Mary Elizabeth?
Yes.
Great.
Special tub that was kept from year to year.
Oh, she always used the same one to make the tea? How about you? Did you roll down the hill at the reunion?
I imagine I was one of the rollers.
Linda, tell the story about going to Uncle Ace's funeral and the two old farmers came in.
I can tell you something else.
Please do.
The McKinney reunion kind of petered out.
Yes.
People got old and just it kind of stopped. Well, Lucille McKinney, she started it up again. She got it, everybody, and there was a few came to the McKinney reunion, and Lucille started it up again.
But then it kept going backwards all the time, and one year Lucille and Johnny's mother said, we're going to have a reunion. So they invited him to our house on East Parish Street, Frankfort. And it was Lucille, and Mary Elizabeth Clark, and John Vickery, and Hazel.
Well, that's great.
Four of us. That was the last reunion, I think.
Oh, John Vickery, you were Uncle Harold's roommate in college?
You were Harold's roommate in college?
Right.
What college was that?
That was at Purdue in 1935 and 36. We were together.
I don't know if we should ask for stories about that period or not.
And they wore suits. They wore suits to college.
How about the time we fished over Morris Reservoir?
Oh, I remember that one, don't you? Jay and Ned and I went camping with Uncle Johnny, and then we slept in the back of the truck, didn't we?
Slept on the ground.
And then we started trying to build a pontoon boat. Yeah, that was fun. Okay, well, thank you very much, this group right here. We hope to see you next year.
Hi. He had been in San Antonio, Texas with his daughter Sally Lou for quite a while and was in a nursing home. But his wife was buried here, and so after he died, they brought the body back to Clinton, New York, and Richard and I went to the funeral. Excuse me. And there were two older gentlemen back of us talking about him and his life, about how common he was, but yet was a professor at the college.
Hamilton College.
Yes. And it was very interesting to listen to these men talk about him.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And
yes,
I'll bet. They had on bib overalls.
Yes, they had on bib overalls.
Yeah, that was the most time that I ever spent around him. I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. But it was a very interesting trip. I still remember a lot of it. Good.
Something else.
Yes, go right ahead.
Many years ago, Johnny's mother gave us a plate about this big around, and it was a Bavarian china, hand-painted plate, all sculpted around, beautiful plate. When she was up to see Uncle Asa one time, of course he was quite an animal lover, as you well know, squirrels and stray cats and stuff. And they went to the basement, and here was this plate sitting on the basement floor. And she says, Asa, what have you got this plate down here for? And he says, well, I put the milk in there for the cats. Well, she about, had a fit because he didn't realize what a plate he had.
Right.
So he says, do you want it? And she says, yes, I want it. She brought it home, and she had it for a long time, and then she gave it to us. And now then, I'm not sure whether Linda has it or whether Susan, our other daughter, has it.
Jennifer has it.
Jennifer has it. So the
My
great,
daughter.
Oh, your daughter has
granddaughter
it. Good.
has the plate. Uncle Asa fed the kids.
Wow. Uncle Asa told me the last trip that he was back home that, no, it's fine, had it not been that he, in all likelihood, would have married Jess Rector, which probably went to the 6th grade. She lived around the corner. And he told me she's a very intelligent woman. That was Uncle Asa. And he said, but I had the buggy all hitched to go see her that night and had asking her to marry him on his mind. I assume he was a late teenager. And he said, Mom made me unhitch and hitch up to a wagon and go to church that night. That's the end, and
Wow, that's a good McKinney story.
Yeah,
good.
One time, Dad and Mommy and Aunt Lizzie and Claudia, Barbara was a baby, and I sat on the diapers behind the driver. And
went to New York.
You talk about class. At dinner time, Uncle Asa would ring the bell, and the help would serve the meal each time.
Was that at his home?
That was at his home.
Is that right?
Wow.
A little bell that notified the help it was time to serve, and that's the way they did it.
Was it you or Diana told me, because she went with the folks and Lucille out there, that the gray squirrels would eat out of Ace's hand?
Well, that was later on. He lived right next to the golf course. Jack and I throwed rocks out there one day onto the green, and boy, the next day all that guy got done on the golf course was pick up rocks.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're not going to spread that. Okay, well, Marilyn, how about your
Haircut when I grow up.
Well, here we are with a couple more people who have a McKinney relationship.
Yes.
How about if we start with you, Susan?
Okay. I'm Susan, daughter of William McKinney, who is the son of Tyne McKinney, who was a brother to
Glennice. No,
John.
John.
John
Grandpa.
Grafton, right?
Yes. Yeah, Glennice's father.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather's brother.
Terrific. And Bill is your brother?
Bill is my brother.
Uh-huh. Well, do you have any family stories you'd like to tell us about, or about your own family that you'd like to tell about, Bill?
Well, I can't think of any. My lineage is the same as hers, of course. So I'll just let her do all the talking.
Did you know any of the other McKinneys when you were growing up?
Oh, yes, I knew my grandpa, IR. I knew Uncle Judd, Uncle Albert. Who else did I know?
Harold.
Well, yes, of course.
How did your grandfather get the nickname Tyne instead of Ristine?
Well, I suppose it was shortened to Ristine.
Just shortened?
Yeah, just shortened, I think.
Okay. And I always wondered how Beth came out of that family. She's such a free spirit, and I loved them all, Esther and Helen and Beth, and I didn't know the boys, but.
But see, she was next to John, so they were the two
They were
youngest.
the same personality.
Yeah, they were the two youngest. So I would say maybe they got babied a little more.
Probably.
The other three.
Yes. Well, they were all great people.
I was telling Bill earlier that I went to his parents' house once with my mother when I was a kid, and I think that I think Mom was talking to her about antiques, Aunt Odie. And another time I drove by with Mom, and somebody had left a barn door open, and Mom said, oh, if they could see that barn door was open, they'd just have a fit because they want everything to be just exactly right.
That's right, I bet.
Everything squared away.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys think of any more stories, please let us know.
I only know one of Carol.
Tell one.
Well, no, it's not a bad story.
Oh, she's hitting me. It must be bad. Oh, it must be good.
It is. I pushed her around the Carroll County Fair in a stroller, and she had this beautiful little bonnet on.
Oh.
I was in the height of my glory.
That's a great story.
Not that long.
Okay. Well, if we get together again, you may have to invite your brother and sisters to come so we can meet them.
This is it.
You're the two that are left? Okay.
We
don't get it.
Children, grandchildren?
We have children.
Yeah.
But no more brothers and sisters.
Okay.
Hey, we're recording.
Okay, I'm Marilyn Price, Chittick, or time I get all of it out. This is above me is my daughter Rita, Andrew, my daughter Vonda, and Hand, and Richard Hand, and Darby Stanton, and Dylan Stanton.
And I'm Meredith Price, and Marilyn and I are the children of Paul and Marjorie Price. Marjorie was Marjorie Ruth McKinney, and she was the daughter of Glennice and Fern McKinney. And let's see if Vonda or Marilyn or Rita have a McKinney story to tell.
Of course, they say my favorite McKinney story is the fact that I was the first grandchild, but since I was only 5 years younger than Phyllis, I really was just another kid.
Yeah.
So I never felt like I was a grandchild because I just was treated like one of the kids. But Phyllis and I would spend many, many hours going upstairs in the attic, dressing up in the formals, and having a great time. And then we'd go up and we'd lay over the transom to the bay, and you could hear Grandpa listen to the radio, and we just had a ball. And then Grandma had the north room that was full of all the old clothes, and we'd get in there and rummage through. Phyllis and I have done dress up and dress since the day we were born.
And I did the narration, and I would speak and give her this big build-up, and then Marilyn would come out.
We did the entrance.
I remember going to Ma Kinney's and there being a mouse in the flour bin or in the sugar bin. I don't remember which one. We were freaked out in that kitchen. And just going through all the old stuff up in the attic. That was neat. Or upstairs.
Upstairs.
Yeah, that was.
Remember Paul Kinney coming after you with his teeth out?
Yeah.
And you scream!
He always called us the grasshoppers.
The grasshoppers.
And I asked Grandma McKinney one time if she'd babysit him because I had to go to a meeting. So I took Rita and Vonda out, and she was on my back because they weren't even 2 yet and they didn't know how to skip. So she was going to learn to teach. They had to learn to skip that day. I came back to get them, and she'd made them 2 dresses. They were both sitting at the kitchen table with sacks around their neck, baking Play-Doh, and the kitchen was one mass of flour, and she said, "And now you get to clean it up."
That was her
Did anybody have a permanent from Grandma?
Yes.
Oh yes, we all had permanent.
Just unfortunately from Aunt Lucille. We had fun.
Did anybody ever get their blackheads picked by Grandma?
Of course.
I went with it.
She picked
And Meredith
blackheads.
always had his haircut there.
Yes. Well, you know, I could tell a million stories because when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time at Grandma and Grandpa McKinney's. But I was teasing Marna and Carol and Diana because when she and Sherry and Patty, when that whole group were little kids, all those girls did for 2 or 3 years was run and scream, 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 scream. And during the day, if I was at Grandma and Grandpa's, Grandma would stand over by the kitchen window, which you could throw up with a hand because she was there. It was like the command post of a ship. She'd throw up that window and scream, "Glennice!" You could hear her for 2 or 3 miles. And she'd be on the telephone on a party line, and she'd be saying, "Arvella, if I hear you on there, that's okay, because you just can listen in if you want to." And she'd be talking to Della or Stella, and they'd all eavesdrop on each other and talk about each other. It was great.
The other thing I guess we've got to get on this tape is that Grandma was the world's, whenever she got in the car, her foot went immediately to the floorboard, and they always used to say from pulling out of her driveway to the church, she hit the road 3 times.
And Meredith's got a good one about when her going out in the field. Tell that.
Well, I've got a story about Grandma and the cats. One time she had a whole bunch of sick cats, and she was too tender-hearted to have them put to sleep, so we gathered them all up and put them in feed sacks and put them in the back of the same 53 DeSoto that we used to go out to see Uncle Asa. And we drove into Circleville, and she said, now I don't want anybody to see us throwing out these cats. So she said, when I go around the corner and I see it's safe, I'll yell, toss! So she'd go around the corner and she said, open the door, toss! And you'd throw out a cat, and of course the cats would hit the ground, they'd dart here and they'd dart there, and their fur was all standing up. And we laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. Both Grandma and I loved that. Another story was we went over by Della Clark's, and Grandpa was in the back of the field where there was a great big deep pond, and he ran out of gas or something. Well, Grandma slowed down just enough to clear the side ditch with that DeSoto, and then she slammed on the accelerator and was driving across the plowed field. Well, Grandpa didn't want her to wreck the car, so you could see him up on the tractor. He's with his arms and yelling and screaming and cursing. You could hear the sky was blue. Didn't faze her, boy. She just kept her foot on the accelerator until she got right up next to it. So those are a few out of a handful of hundreds of Grandma stories. Thank you, Marna.
Love it.
Okay,
can you see the button? Well, we've got all of my mother's brothers and sisters here. There's Uncle Johnny and Uncle Harold and Aunt Barbara and Aunt Phyllis. And if any of you would like to share some McKinney stories with us, we'd love to hear them. Johnny, weren't you just telling one?
I was telling about this one Christmas. We all went back home for breakfast, and Bill Older dressed up to be the Santa Claus, and
who was Bill?
That was Lucille's first husband, and so old Artie Scott, he'd quit farming, and he gave me the old black mare. And she knew home like a tramp. But anyhow, Bill got on that old mare, and he was going to ride in like Santa Claus, you know, with the reindeer. And the old mare, she didn't like that, so she bucked him off. But boy, you talk about everybody laughing. And the old mare took off for Circleville. That's where she lived.
Everyone thought
Lavere,
it was hilarious.
come here. I want you to come here.
Yeah,
Here.
get Claire and Lavere to come too if they want to.
Come here. I want you to tell a story about Santa Claus and the horse. What Bill said to you.
Oh, does he know that story?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. You don't want to tell it?
Well, while we're looking at Uncle Harold, when Jay and Ned and I were little, we got such a lot of good out of each other. And one thing that we did was at the farm at Kirkland, is we'd go up in the barn to build forts. And we'd start to dare each other about whether we had the courage to walk on the barn beams or not. Well, if any of our parents had known that we were up, 40, 50 feet above the floor trying to walk across the barn on those barn beams, I'm sure they would have had a fit. Uncle Harold didn't know it, I don't think. Did you know it?
No, I didn't. Oh, that's a good one.
I want to tell about when I was a little girl, and I'm thinking probably 3 to 4 years old. Dad had a pair of ice skates that he'd put on occasionally and go out in the pig lot south of the house and ice skate. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, Grandpa went ice skating?
Yes.
You're kidding.
Now, my mother was 37 when I was born, so he was 40.
Uh-huh.
The other thing I remember is John Gerald would swing me up on the old threshing machine, which was red hot, and it would be making a haystack, or it was actually oats, because it just, straw stacks.
Out there by the barn?
Out behind the barn to the east, and it was so scary because it was huge. And then when we put up hay, I got to ride on the horse, and John Gerald...
Oh, the horse that would pull the hay up into the hay mow?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
of course all I was doing was ride on it, because they'd say, all right, and then the horse take off by itself when you yell that, and you'd say, whoa, and stop, so I was essentially just sitting.
Yeah, you guys must have had a smart horse.
That was old Topsy. Topsy was her name.
Was it? And of course everybody drank out of one jug.
Just wipe it off with their arm.
Ew.
Wash out of the same tub.
That's right. They had a tub of water out in the yard, and the women would come, and you know, they'd dress chickens, bake pies, and the men, like he says, all washed in the same water out in the yard. Let me tell you, the last one was pretty dirty water.
They rank.
Did you have to pump with a hand pump to get the water?
Pitcher pump.
What was it there where they eventually had the well house? Oh, it was in the kitchen.
Yeah, on the east wall.
Uh-huh. See, I don't remember any of that.
No, it would have been past.
And my mother, when she'd can green beans, she'd have them in that sink, and it was low because of the pump. And she'd say, now, talk about reverse psychology. You come and fill the fruit jars because you got nice little hands. Oh, boy, I just put
And you fell for it.
I fell for it. So that's another story. A lot of canning went through there.
Yeah. Well, Grandma was still canning when I was a kid.
Essentially, we lived off of the farm. Nothing was bought except cigarettes, coffee, sugar, and the bread man came to the house. Can you think of anything else that was
And
bought?
can you believe Mommy spent $5 one week, and it was bad.
Uh-oh, she was in
Because
trouble.
she made her own hams,
Mm-hmm.
cured her own hams.
I was going to ask Harold about
Had a
that.
huckster wagon.
That's right.
Coming by, once a week, was it?
I don't know whether it was once a week or once every 2 weeks.
White old wolf used to come by
That's right. I was
every
scared
summer.
to death of him. I knew he was a wolf.
He had dry goods, you know.
Oh, man.
Boots and overshoes and overalls.
Mommy would always ask him to stay all night.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
The huckster I remember was from Sheridan.
Elwood Baker, the candlestick maker.
And he had a celluloid bill, and I laid all afternoon in the front yard under the bushes, weather like this, holding an old hen, because I wanted bologna so bad, and forget anybody giving you any money. And I traded that old hen for a pound of bologna and 2 orange pops. And he got off, went around behind, weighed the hen, come back in, got in the huckster, wiped his hands off
On this old rag.
Yeah, this old dirty rag, and then sliced the bologna by hand.
Ew. She always was a traitor, wasn't she? She knew a good...
It was really
And
good.
maybe he had just finished getting Mommy some kerosene before he did
Probably.
that.
Oh, did you get kerosene from
yeah,
him
you bought
too?
kerosene off him also.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well,
Harold, did you guys butcher when you were kids? Did you have to butcher hogs or anything?
5 and 6 at a
Oh,
time.
yeah, we would, neighbors would join together, and there might be half a dozen neighbors get together, and I remember one
No,
time.
it wasn't neighbors. It was brothers and sisters like Uncle Will's.
That's right.
Lee
Oh.
Bowden.
Well,
But they were neighbors.
they were
Uh-huh. Oh, the neighbors were the relatives. Well, that was nice.
They usually would have maybe half a dozen hogs hanging on the hook by daylight. And then, of course, they would proceed to cut the animals up, and then we'd render the lard. And well, every time I go by the home place, all I can think about is work, work, work.
And I'll tell
Everything
you,
was physical work.
if you
bet.
get constipated, just get a few cracklings and it'll take care of it.
Well,
And
write that down, Rosie.
Write that down.
Another little story that maybe some of you may not know about, but one real cold night, well, that was late November, Lucille had a date with Roscoe Bass, I think.
Okay.
They got in late, their, usual date, and that night apparently someone got into the adult breeding turkeys, which were out in a portable building in the pasture field.
South of the barn.
And south of the barn there, and they had roost inside to sit on. Where were they? They were up on top of the building. They didn't like those roosts, but someone came in there that night, took all those turkeys, I don't know now for sure how many, a dozen,
I never knew
it
how
was
many.
10 or 12 or so, full-grown turkeys. On the way down out of there, someone lit a .45 pistol slipping
Oh,
out of his
that's
holster.
right.
And you know who's got that?
Jay, isn't it?
I have.
Well, did you ever find out who it was?
Oh, no.
We always surmised
Those
at one
turkeys
time.
were sure hard to hold on to, though.
And you wish you had that gun back.
Well, now we finally know who's guilty.
There was one time that Jimmy Merrill lived south of my folks on the west side of the road, and they claimed that John Dillinger came and stayed there a matter of 3 weeks. A big black limousine, and the lights would flash to the side, and the neighbors were scared to death, and that was during the time the turkeys disappeared.
Yeah.
So those,
John Duckworth told me that Babe Merrill's wife was an early wine.
yes,
wasn't she?
yes, an early wine was involved in
And
his.
that Dad had told him that story, and he said that is a true story.
Mhm. Early
And
wine was in his
That's probably
game.
been in the last 50. And the funny part of that, Dad said as a teenagers, he had been among those that went out and stole a hen now and then and roasted it
No.
on a campfire. And
Not
that's
our
probably
grandpa.
what
They wrapped
they
it
were
in mud, wasn't it, over the
Oh, it
campfire,
could have been. I
and
don't
then
remember that.
everything. It was.
Another little story, and then I'll be quiet.
No, don't be quiet.
We milked a lot of cows. And we kids had to get out there and do it by hand. There was no such thing as automatic milk.
They didn't have a surge from
We
John
didn't have a
McKinney?
surge or deal
No,
down
well,
or
that
any
was
of those
before
things.
John McKinney got in the
And
business.
so,
That's what gave him
also, we had people in Circleville that wanted to buy milk. So we would get up in the morning, milk those cows, run it through our strainers, pour it into our quart cans, and then we'd go to town and deliver it. And we were late at school quite often.
Every morning, I think.
And we had to do that all the time. And that's one of the reasons why I say, if let's say it's going to rain and we got a load of hay out there, what do? We get up in the middle of the night and unload that hay into the hay mow, which we did a few
Farming
times.
hasn't changed much.
No, it hasn't changed much. No, it's a good life.
Well, I've got some gossip
I've
here
got
that I
one
have to
good-
ask you
I've got
guys
one
about.
good one here.
All right.
You talk about a little air behind it now, and this has got a lot of air behind it. This little town of Circleville had a big family of, what was their names? Pickard. And things were hard up. I mean, you couldn't trade money for money. And so that spring, Dad planted soup beans on every row of a 20-acre field. Because we needed the beans also. Okay, there was 16 people walked from Circleville out there to where we lived, and they picked beans for half. And we had an old brooder house that they put Dad's half in, about as big as that porch right there. The next spring, we run those through the thrashing machine, and you talk about a bunch of farts. I mean, they had a wagon load of them.
Well, I want to tell you about John Carol and Harold's room on the north room upstairs. We were supposed to clean every week. John Carol would take apples to bed with him and throw them underneath the bed, and they would get nasty up there. I mean, really nasty. And I'd complain to Mommy, well, Harold and John Carol could do no wrong in her eyes. Anything they wanted to do, why, that was fine. And Phyllis and I, we thought it was wonderful when we got to ride over to Purdue to get Harold. And
What year would you have been at Purdue? Because I can remember.
Started in 35, but then I dropped out.
we'd have
next
white
year.
shirts. He wore white shirts.
Well, I remember riding in the car with the white shirts laid over the
Dad
seat
got
on the hangers.
cholera and the hogs, and
Yes, I remember that.
that summer I don't know how many hogs
Because
I
he
buried.
cried and cried.
And I knew they didn't have the money to spare, so I stayed home.
You laid out, what was it,
One year.
1 year, and then Uncle Judd talked you into going back, right?
Well, I don't know who did, but
Uncle Judd did.
so anyway,
Well, I'll tell you who talked him in was Charlie McGoy.
Was it?
Yes.
Yeah, he lived with Charlie McGoy, the MCL.
Yeah.
He started MCL, so.
Oh, really?
Well, I got two more stories here talking
Great.
about John Carol and Harold's room. John
Boy, it must have
Carroll
been a
being
notorious
11
room.
years older than me, all he did was tease you and drag you around, you know, and then he'd shoot up the stairway. And just as I'd shoot up behind him, going to hit him back or something, he'd bend over and moon you.
No, 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 I can't imagine that anybody in our family would do that. That would make a nice picture.
And the other thing, back to butchering, the day of butchering, like he's saying, everybody had a job. You either cranked the sausage thing and you stuffed the gut.
You washed the guts.
They washed out the gut, and then you hook that onto the sausage and crank that into it. But you rendered the lard, and all you got to eat the first day was called sweetbread, because the animal was warm yet, and you didn't eat any of the food till it cooled out. Well, sweetbread was nothing but chunks of fat, as I remember it, wasn't it?
And the fish line, we would eat the fish line.
What was the cracklings?
That was the lard after
the hide that had been fried and rendered down for lard.
I thought you were going to tell about combing the hairs on Harold's arm.
Oh, that's another story.
Tell that one. That's a
Yeah,
good
okay.
Well, when he was in college, so I was born in 1934, so I was 3 or 4 years old. He would come home from school, and you see.
Well, that's probably where they grew.
And Mommy would be cutting his hair, and I'd play barber on his arm. They were even more hairy than they are now.
So you practiced your beautician skills on Uncle Harold?
Really fun.
Yes.
Well, I was going to say that I have one gossipy story about Barbara, and it has to do with my mom. It seems that Barbara murdered something that was very near and dear to my mother. What was it?
Was it her gosling? I don't.
Yes.
I didn't remember, but she was reminding me. I loved it.
Do you know that story, Harold?
No.
How about you, Phyllis? Do you know that story? Well, my mom told me several times, because Mom loved animals. When we lived at Kirkland on the farm, we had ducks and geese and hogs and beef cows and dairy cows and goats and you name it. But anyway, when Mom was little and Barbara was little, Barbara was going to water the goslings, but she drowned them instead. She loved them to death. She drowned them with the hose. So Mom was always telling her. But you guys probably remember too that Mom had a brown Swiss cow at Grandma's after we moved to Circleville. And the cow got in an old fallen apart hog house and got all bruised, and its skin started to come off. And we would go out there every day after Mom got home from working at Delco. We'd go out to Grandma's, and Mom would use scissors and cut chunks of that cow's hide off and, doctor that cow, and it lived through it.
I'd like to tell about our folks. Dad being what I would, looking back, he was quiet and more of an introvert, but he was quite fiery when he got mad. But I remember especially someone north had some kind of family trouble. They lived down on the Don Orr place.
You mean that son of a bitch, or?
Uncle Johnny, you're going to have to be more exact. I think I heard about 7 or 8 neighbors with that label.
If he didn't say that, he didn't say too much. Did he?
No.
That's Dad. And they sent for him, and Dad went down there, and it must have been pretty volatile because Dad tried to reason with both of them. I don't know if it was husband and wife. I don't know what. Do you know this story?
Wasn't.
Was the people on the west side?
Shimmels?
I don't know. I just remember as a little girl that was a big deal.
Well, who was it married Del Clark's sister that lived
Holmes?
Yeah, Holmes.
Now, they used to get into some real bad set too.
Really?
Well, they were on the east side of the road. That wasn't.
And the other thing, our mother, anybody in the neighborhood that had any kind of illness, they come and got our mother. Or if they need anything sewn, our mother did it. Of course, free gratis. She cut everybody's hair in the neighborhood.
Even mine.
As I remember, Della and Walter gave her 15 cents, maybe a quarter on big days. That was for 2 people. they were just that kind of people. And now we don't even know our neighbors, let alone a big family.
Well, she lived by help someone today. That was her creed, to help someone. You cast your bread upon the water, and it may not come back to you just like you have given, but it will come back. And she lived that way.
While Aunt Bertha was living, she called me in the hot part of the summer like this, and she said, when I said hello, she said, well, you were born today. I thought, now Aunt Bertha. I said, what are you talking about? Well, you were born today. Well, it turns out she was reading her diary, just like you're saying, and they had butchered. I was born January 16th, and they had butchered at Bertha and Elwyn's that day, and I was born that night.
So she remembered that.
She was up in the 80s.
Yeah.
Well, how about a Lucille story? Does anybody have a good Lucille story to share?
She worked 25 years at Penny's, and every child, I think, in Frankfort, Sugar Creek Township, Michigan Town, they all went up to see Lucille, and she was their friend. And like the preacher said, you asked for a donation for a meal. If you needed 1 pie, she would come with 3 pies. And even when she had Lou Gehrig's, the church had a booth at Frankfort. She sat on a stool, and she and I made 6 pies. And she done the mixing, and I put them in and out of the oven, and she done the crimping, and we took them, and that was the last she got to do for the church.
And
she was supposed to donate 2, but she donated 6.
She came to my store while a salesman was there, and she couldn't talk anymore, but she would point to what she thought I ought to pick out.
Before dark.
Really enjoyed it.
I'm glad we got you on this video.
I only said a few words.
You can tell more.
But we like the word you said.
I've got to tell about when Harold got his senior cards at Purdue. He called home and he said, I need senior cards and a top hat. We're going to have a parade. And Mommy went and she sold a bunch of old hens. And we bought the senior cards and the top hat. And we just drove like mad, and we got there in time, and you put them on real quick, and you got in the parade, didn't you? I don't remember.
You don't remember that?
Oh, boy, did they smell good.
And I bet there
they
isn't a person here that knows how to cull an old hen.
Cull?
Cull.
Whether they lay or not, you stick your fingers up their butthole.
Because when you went
No,
to
really?
Frankfort, you'd be all cleaned up, ready to go, and the last thing you had to do was go out and cull the hens, because I assume they bought the groceries.
Well, of course.
And you didn't want to take one that was going to lay.
You had to feel here on their laying bones, and if they were layers, there'd be a space, and if it was close together, she was out. I hated that.
I don't blame you.
Then I'm going to tell about Harold dating Vera.
Oh, tell it.
Well, all at once, we didn't know he was going with anybody. Here he pulled in the barn lot with this girl. We thought she was a Fern.
She was from Kirkland.
She was about that big around, just pretty as a speckled pup, as Dad said. And Harold fell for her, didn't you?
Naturally.
What a lovely, lovely family.
We can't pass over all this without talking about the free shows either. That was the highlight of the week because they had them at Circleville, Hillisburg, and Pickard.
And Kirkland.
Did they? Well, that's too far away. We didn't. But I always rode with B and Buzz Turner because, like Harold said, Mommy and Dad would still be in the field or milking, and I was late to every school function I went. Claire tells this story about the band had started to play, and I come dragging in with my saxophone, and the program had already started.
They thought she was just making a grand entrance.
But that was wonderful to go to the free shows.
And then let's talk about Margie, how pretty she was.
Oh, yeah, and a dear person.
Oh, my. She could make the best pies.
Billy Riddle, while we're on Lucille, and I want to say something about Margie. Billy Riddle, I never seen him in later years that he didn't say, "You're just the image of Lucille." He loved Lucille dearly. She must have been the belle of the ball in her day, and I'm sure never dated Billy Riddle or anything.
You know, they went to Circleville to school, Lucille and Harold did, and they had senior day or something, and they took my tricycle to school, and they broke the wheels on it.
Oh, you can't trust anybody.
Oh, the Camel Boys and Harold, they rode that sucker, and it was ruined.
Lucille did the Charleston for me in Grandma's kitchen one time when I asked her to.
No, and I remember well, Marilyn isn't here, but I remember the day Marilyn was born, and it was cold. I remember that, talking about the upstairs ventilator. It was really cold, and Mommy went to Margie's, and Marilyn was born that day, so I was 6 years old. And
She was born in the little house at the Ryan farm, I think.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And she was a big baby. I don't know what she weighed, but I remember.
I don't remember now, but she was a big baby.
She was a big baby.
Doc Mount came to the house. Doc Mount came to our house once, and I thought, well, why is he doing here? He came for breakfast, and I got to go down to Aunt Cressy or down to Uncle Wilson's and Aunt Claudia's. And I always wanted to go down there, but for some reason or other, they shooed me out of the house when I come home. There she was.
I didn't talk babies back then.
No, I didn't know Mommy was expecting a baby.
There she was.
Oh, there she
but
was.
there wasn't a dearer person than Margie. And
a Christian. And she lived her Christian
every
life.
time I go by, she used to tell them at church, well, you do what you want to, because they talk about the church closing. She'd say, well, you do what you want to, but I'm going to be here. I'll be here. And there she is out there. And I can still hear her say that.
Yeah, she put a lot of stock in that church.
She was 46, so.
They talked about naming Phyllis Mary. Doc Dunham said, you're not naming her Mary. We got that Mary. She's nothing but a whore there.
Which Mary was that?
Who knows?
Let's rat on her.
Who knows? So they didn't name her Mary.
I love the name Mary.
It's at least 60 years ago. Nobody's going to say anything against her now.
But Doc Mount wasn't going to have it, so Mommy said, okay. Well, he probably didn't charge her anything. That's because she wouldn't name
Well, I'm going to tell you guys one story about my mother, Margie, and I don't even know if you guys knew it. I was about 5 or 6. I couldn't have been much more than that because we were still living at the Ryan farm, and she decided that she was going to go back to the woods and pick up walnuts.
That's right, she did.
So there was a patch of pasture that was probably maybe 20 or 30 acres, and then there was a woods behind that. Well, we started walking across the pasture, and there were young beef cattle in there, and they were frisking around, chasing each other, not really paying that much attention to us. But then all of a sudden they just started tearing around like in the movies, and they started toward us. Well, she grabbed me by the hand and said, run! So, you know, I was just hitting the high spots because she was a fast runner. We got all the way back in the woods, and the wind had knocked down a tree, and we jumped on that, and the cows came running by again. It was just like in the movies.
Oh, my.
Very exciting.
It wasn't somebody hurt by a bull on that farm once.
Maybe.
I think so. Well, talking about that, I had some people nagging at me that wanted to come today, and they're up there in my notebook, so I want you to look at them.
Oh, good.
1954.
When Paul came to see Margie, he always gave me a stick of gum. I could hardly wait till he came.
To get rid of you.
No, well, yeah. Who had chewing gum?
Yes, it's
so
funny.
Yeah.
They're telling good stories. You too. Yeah. Taking off. Yeah. Thank you for doing all that. It was great.
They gave us copies somehow so we can send them to each other.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you. So, Barbara, who's here with you?
My husband, Levere, of 56 years.
Holy cow.
My grandson, Kent Crawford Hollingsworth. My
Hi,
daughter,
Kent.
Marna Janice Hollingsworth. And my son-in-law, Kim Allen
You got it.
Hi, Kim.
Hi there.
Well, what's your last name, LeVere?
I think it's Crawford.
Crawford.
Used to be.
Who were your parents?
Homer Crawford and Carrie Crawford.
Yeah. A great pair.
Yes.
So do you guys have any more stories you'd like to share?
Oh, I don't know. We've had a good life.
I don't have any big stories.
Farmed and raised a lot of hogs and cattle, and LeVere milked. The kids were down in the barn with us, and they fed calves and fed the cows. And
Died with a kid with Meredith Price helped put up hay 1 or 2 years.
That's
I don't know
right.
Anybody knows who he is.
That's right. It was great, too.
And would come over and help clean out the junk house, and then we would go down to Midway truck stop and have hamburgers and french fries, and boy, were they good.
They sure were. I remember you'd say, okay, now you get done, we're going to be able to go out to the Midway. And I thought, I don't remember the fair being around here. And it wasn't that kind of a Midway. What was it? Midway between Kokomo and Indianapolis or something?
Yeah.
Just
Probably.
a truck stop on 31, and they baked their pies, and they made their hamburgers, and it was good food, and that was really a treat.
I told Barbara last summer that once when I was over there, we were bringing lunch to the guys that were working someplace, and she took everybody a Pepsi, and I thought, wow, this is really living. They get to have a Pepsi.
And we used to take lemonade and iced tea in the middle of the afternoon because it was so hot. Haymaking time.
Uh-huh.
And that way that they didn't get sick of drinking too much water. And now Kent, he helps feed the sheep and take care of the cats and the dogs. Just sometimes.
All the time?
No.
No.
I'm mostly riding my bike.
He's a good bike rider.
Better tell him who's not here.
And we don't have her son John and his family. Laura has had surgery as of 2 weeks ago, and Keegan is a 7th grade basketball player, and they were playing basketball at Whitestown. So they were coming later, so we're in hopes that they get here. Keegan and Connor and John.
Yeah, if we don't get them, we'll get them next time.
That's right.
Good. Okay, well, we're glad that we got all you guys on here.
Save enough time for Phyllis's.
So this is John Crawford over here. And John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm still young. I'm gray for some reason. My wife couldn't make it today. She just had surgery. This is one of my sons, Keegan McKinney Crawford.
Whoa!
Yes!
And he's 12, be 13 December.
Hi,
The
Keegan.
other one in the gray shirt is Connor Payton Crawford.
Hi.
He's 8 and will be a 3rd grader.
Oh, yeah. My niece Rita's son is the same age. That's good. Well, John, let's think. Can you think of a good Grandma and Grandpa McKinney story, or a good story when I used to watch you when you were a little kid?
Well, it's a good Ma Kenny story for me. She would always boss me around.
No.
Oh, yeah. So I think I was there probably 2 nights in a row, and I had enough. Mom finally came and picked me up, and I said, "Thank God for picking me up. She bosses me around more than you do."
When he was sick, where did he want to go? To Ma Kenny. She could
I
make
want to
him
go
well.
Ma Kenny. She don't boss me around as much as you do. So wherever I was at, I
She
think.
could make him well, too.
And the haircuts.
Yeah, the haircuts.
I remember the nicks you used to get.
And she'd smack your head back and forth.
Yep.
Yeah, she had the delicate touch.
When Aunt Lucille was staying there after Bill passed away, we wouldn't hardly hit the door, and they'd start in fixing chicken salad sandwiches, and we called it pressed duck, or the kids did, and they'd make chocolate pudding for Marna, and that was the top card, pressed duck and chocolate pudding.
Ooh, that sounds good to me.
Playing upstairs in the uncluttered rooms.
Right, or in the attic, crawling through the attic.
I was too scared to go in the attic.
That was all. You always had to be careful not to step through where the laths were.
Yep.
That was dangerous, yeah.
That's all the close ones I think I could remember.
Had a lot of good times in that upstairs.
Oh, and the Christmases.
Oh yeah, Christmas was terrific.
Yeah. because Lucille always wore a girdle and bent over, and we always made fun of her girdles.
Do you remember the one year that she
Had a
finally put the
garter.
date on it?
And then all the newcomers, we would always,
Toilet paper.
yeah, toilet paper.
I didn't get that. I don't know what
You're the
happened.
one we liked.
Oh.